Welcome to November 2025's Coach Meet. It's a pleasure to have you all here. We welcome everyone who's joined us live on the Zoom call and everybody who will be watching this on different platforms after the fact. My name is Amadeus. I'm the head of marketing at Zanga African Metrics. It's a pleasure to have you all here. We have an exciting presentation for you today. So just some audience reminders. You're free to turn your camera on if you'd like to, and please keep your microphone off. This is a recording session. Please feel free to join us with your feedback. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of this webinar. So this is some basic housekeeping. Thank you so much. We are excited to have you here. We are Zanga African Metrics. We are an HR tech company that focuses on supporting leadership development in emerging markets through our assessments and data-driven insights. We have a unique dual mastery approach to this, where we develop leaders to understand themselves deeply in context. We're excited to have you with us today. We continue our series on our leadership framework. This time around, we're focusing on execution. If you haven't done so already, please follow us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Zanga African Metrics, Zanga Metrics on LinkedIn. And don't forget to join our mailing list so you never, ever miss any of our webinars, reports, or any of the other content we put out. Pleasure to have you here, both live and recording. And I will be introducing today's presenter, Doreen, who is a professional business psychologist with experience in training programs, leadership development, employee well-being, and psychometrics. And she is the research and development lead for Zanga African Metrics. She has an exciting presentation for you today, and I can't wait to see what she has for us today. Over to you, Doreen, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Amadeus. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Okay.
Yes, we can.
So, all right, thank you. Amadeus said it's a coach meet, it's a public webinar, but no harm done. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. And as Amadeus introduced, we're continuing on our series of where we are breaking down and talking about the competency framework, the Zanga Competency Framework. And just to give you a better or quick overview of what I will cover in the rest of this presentation. So I will talk briefly about the leadership journey, which is our leadership philosophy, and how Zanga pillars, the pillars of our competency framework relate to it, before going ahead and talking about or discussing the pillar of execution, which is the one we're focusing on today. But also we'll go over and discuss a leader execution and problem solving model that explains in context or the type of problems and the nature and the type of knowledge, skills, and abilities that leaders need to possess in order to navigate solving the problems that they encounter on a day-to-day basis in their roles, before talking about the particular competencies or the knowledge, skills, abilities under our pillar of execution, and also discussing the self-report and 360 tools at Zanga Metrics. At the very end, we'll have a short 3 takeaway slide as well that explains or gives advice on how you can start applying these insights especially by saying what you can start doing, what you can stop doing, and what you can continue doing. So welcome, and at any point at all, feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and they will be addressed at the Q&A during the Q&A session at the end of my presentation. Right. So just to offer to put a little bit of context to our discussion today, we are going to be discussing the pillar of execution, like I have introduced. And this is a quote that I came across as I was preparing for this session. And it's by these two business psychologists, Hackman and Walton, who have also done a lot of work in employee engagement. And it says if a leader manages by whatever means to ensure that all functions critical to both task accomplishment and group maintenance are adequately taken care of, then the leader has done his job or her job well. And it what this does, or I like this quote and included it in today's presentation, is it captures the nature of the execution of a leader's role quite succinctly. And um, there's a lot of ways we can look at what a leader does and what they try to accomplish and their goals and their KPIs. There's so many ways we can look at it and theorize it. But it comes down to them ensuring that the task at hand is accomplished. And so that involves defining the tasks, um, putting together or determining what types of people would be the right fit to accomplish the task, starting communicating the vision, starting and maintaining um, momentum towards accomplishing the task. But also, we can think of it as those all of those are related to accomplishing the task at hand. But also, there is an important, or the second element of it is maintaining the group. So making sure the team is the right team, of course, is assembled towards completing the said task. Um, they have the right set of skills. They are motivated. They're engaged. They work together well. Sorry. Um, I just sorry. They work together well. Um, this is the crux of the leader's role and the leader's job. And in in accomplishing this, in making sure that the functions related to the task and maintaining a group are taken care of, they also operate in a very challenging situation usually. As organizations, they cope with demands related to performance and meeting the bottom line, but also recognizing the unique needs of the people who comprise the subsystems. And some organizations have realized and continually um, are reminded of the value of leadership by, you can see here by a report by Harvard Business Review. It reports that more than $60 billion annually is spent on leadership development programs. And so organizations understand that the tasks and the role of leaders is quite key to obtaining or to meeting the goals of the organization in general. So we are going to be our discussion around execution will um, we'll focus on these two areas. So accomplishing the task and maintaining the group. Understanding that the task accomplishment in itself is not as simple as, say, writing up a document is very complex, as I explained. And the group maintenance is also not just ensuring that the right team or the team works together, but it's the right team, they're motivated, engaged, and etc. So our leadership development philosophy at Zanga Metrics is one that we have discussed, but I also think is necessary in the context of today's conversation and webinar. And we visualize or we conceptualize the leadership development journey, the leadership development endeavor as a journey that one has to undertake or one is undertaking from when they start their career, maybe even before, based on um, when you look at things like the knowledge, skills, abilities, etc., that one is exposed to and they have developed by the time they're entering the workforce. And and so as they continue changing the roles, as they continue changing the industries that they work in and other key areas, they will be continually be called to develop some aspects of their own um, knowledge, skills, abilities. Some of them are technical and very, very related to the nature of the work that they're doing, but some of them are more non-technical. And these non-technical competencies, these non-technical knowledge, skills, and abilities that are necessary for people to develop as they change roles, as they change industries, as they go further up in their career ladder, is what we capture and we discuss in our framework. And research supports that these non-technical competencies actually contribute to superior performance in the workplace. And so our framework is based on these the pillars and the competencies that we've discussed before. And like I said previously, today we are going to discuss the one of execution. So just to give a quick recap on the other three, which we have covered, well, with the exception of the last one, which we'll be covering next month. So the Zanga Leadership Competency Framework pillars. Um, the first one that we include in the pillars of these non-technical competency groups that are key to superior performance in one's role, but also in one's evolution in their leadership journey is mindset. And in mindset, we are capturing or we're looking at a person's skills, abilities, knowledge in terms of how they think. So how they conceptualize things, what they pay attention to, what they give meaning to, because that then affects how they act and how they lead. And the second group of competencies, or the second pillar, is relationships, wherein we look at skills related to how people interact with others. So their understanding of themselves and other people's emotions and how they manage these relationships with people that they work with, be it supervisors, be it peers, be it colleagues, be it people that report to them. And the third competency group or pillar is the one we're discussing today, which is execution. And what we mean by execution is the output or the actual behaviors that are then observed as leaders deliver their work. And as opposed to mindset, that's something that is not quite tangible, it cannot be seen. We can see and infer about how a person thinks from how they act, from what they say, from their reactions, um, but it's quite intangible. And relationships as well, that through observation, we can tell or we can have a better sense of how one relates to other people, but it's again something that's a bit nuanced and is not quite tangible. But with execution, we're talking about the actual behaviors that we observe, perhaps on a day-to-day basis, that leaders execute as they try to deliver their work. And for our discussion today, we'll be talking about their work as it relates to um, making sure that the task is completed or the task is done, and also the group is maintained, as discussed. And the last competency group is leadership, that is looking at how people exert influence on themselves, on the teams, um, and we'll be looking at that one next month. Right. So this is a problem-solving model, and we can all agree, I think, that leaders encounter unique or what are sometimes called ill-defined problems. That is, problems that perhaps don't have only a single solutions. There's so many ways to conceptualize, and there's so many solutions possibly to be taken from the same nature of the problem. Um, and they not only encounter such nature of problems, they also encounter this nature of problems in a world that is moving very fast. Technology is evolving at a pace that is really forcing people to keep up and rethink the ways that they're working together, but also the ways that they're working on their tasks. And so it's bringing new problems and new situations for leaders to navigate on a daily basis. So this is a model by Mumford, Zaccaro, and etc., also business psychologists and leadership scholars, which is related to execution as because the nature of leadership work is one that is involving a lot of solving a lot of problems for the organization, for teams, and etc. And so this I thought was a good perspective to take when we're discussing execution and leadership delivery. And so in this model of problem solving, they put forward and discuss the three types of knowledge that interact or are important and key to effective problem solving in organizations. So on the very left-hand side, they put forward that a leader's knowledge of the problem and the role itself is key to solving the problem or how they approach the work. So this involves the ability to define a problem. For example, say, be able to understand what the origins of the problem are, what the significance is, but also what are the possible solutions and how those solutions affect other people in that organization. And so this is the first step or the first type of knowledge, skills, and abilities that are involved. If you look at the box right next to that knowledge group, it further defines or further explains what exactly is involved in this group of knowledge, skills, and abilities. So, ability to define the problem, gather information from different sources, formulate understanding, engineer trial solutions. So, we can see there's some of these skills that are quite intangible, for example, with defining the problem, formulating understanding. It could be one that this could be processes that a leader engages in themselves or tries to think of themselves or involves other people. Um, but this is related to knowledge of the people. As you can see, the arrows point towards the relationship between the knowledge of the problem and the role and the knowledge of the people that are present in that organization. So including how these people communicate, the structure of the subsystems that the leader is leading, be it teams, be it individuals, be it consultants, and how they work together, but also people who are going to implement these solutions and revise and be able to give feedback into the understanding of the original problem and how to navigate it. But the third group of knowledge, skills, and abilities are related to problem solving in leaders is knowledge of the organization. And here they put forward that a leader's knowledge of how to protect outcomes and reactions. So knowledge of people, including how what might be just being able to predict what might be the outcome of these different solutions that we've generated and are thinking of taking. What would be people's reactions? Is it going to be met by resistance? Is it going to be something that's more acceptable because it's something we've done before and we're used to? But also their ability and knowledge of how to identify restrictions and requirements, be it organizational policies, be it what is considered acceptable, ethical, and moral in that organization and what isn't, how to garner support and who they need to lobby for support in order to implement these solutions that they've thought of, and also how to formulate plans and visions, which are also need to be communicated, implemented, and revised. And so but in the center is something that's also key. And these scholars discussed as this being the foundation of a leader's problem solving. So their own experience and their ability to take different perspectives or step outside of themselves, which then enables them to gather information. It enables them to identify or be able to predict possible outcomes and reactions from people, but also to communicate well um, and structure the information and the solutions that they're trying to solve. So this is key to how they interact or how they not only how they interact. So there's a bunch of social skills that are involved here with the communication, with understanding people and perspective taking. That would fall under the pillar of relationships and in the Zanga Competency Framework. But also there is some skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities in this model that fall under the execution model of the Zanga Competency Framework, which is what we are going to focus on today. So before we move on to the looking at particularly the execution pillar and the competencies involved, there is a quick question. It should be on your screen. And remember, when we're talking of execution, we're talking about accomplishing tasks, but also maintaining the groups that is accomplishing the tasks. Just gonna give you a minute to share with us what you think. Okay, so I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. So 75% of us have shared that what constraints or what limits your execution in your position right now is unclear priorities. And this is definitely, and 25% of us share that it's slow decisions. So these are definitely struggles or challenges that leaders often have to navigate in their roles. There seems to be so much that's very important, so much that needs attention uh, related to the task or what needs to be done. And like we say, the bottom line related to the people and how they need to be motivated and engaged in unique ways. But also, when there's a lot of people who are coming in to make decisions, to agree on decisions, that process could be slow and it could slow down other key work in the organization, which can even put you at a disadvantage, for example, when it comes to competitors. So all this is covered in our pillar of execution. And when we in our framework, what we have included under execution are these four competencies. So, like shared in the previous model, some of them relate to the aspects discussed there and the knowledge, skills, and abilities um, necessary to solve problems in leadership positions. Um, so these competencies are one, problem solving, and here we look at the aspect especially of how people collect information that is related to the problem. If you remember from the previous model, we it was shared that when approaching a problem, when solving a problem, there is information that needs to be collected about the nature of the problem, its origin, um, why it's important, its significance, and etc. And so the competency that we include under our pillar of execution in problem solving is how people approach challenging solutions in complex situations, but specifically, what is their approach towards collecting relevant information that will help them um, reach the right solutions. This also recognizing that there could be multiple ways to solve the same situation based on available resources, technology, people who are implementing it, um, organizational constraints, and others. But how does one go about collecting the relevant information and the relevant evidence needed to make the decision? And so the next competency that is under the execution pillar is the approach to business. So what do they prioritize and what do they focus on? And it is clear that there are there is a scale that needs to be balanced, and that is not always when I think when we talk of a balanced scale, it's easy to visualize one that is equal, but situations can call for prioritization of different aspects or different factors and outcomes in organizations. For example, um, how people tend to focus on whether you tend to focus on your team or you focus on your customers can be is a delicate scale to balance because the team is what delivers the work that or the products or the services that goes to your customers and your customers are receiving. And so under this competency, we look at and scrutinize what individuals prioritize on and especially whether they're able to focus and prioritize their customers and the results of the organization. And the third competency that we include under the pillar of execution is decision making. So we've seen how people collect information with problem solving. We've seen what they prioritize in business approach. And under the third competency is then how they decide on what course of action to take and implement it. So weighing available options, um, seeing what's possible and what's not possible given the circumstances and the context, including the cultural context, by the way, and then deciding on a course of action and implementing it not only after they have reached the threshold or they've considered all possible angles, but also implementing it fast enough to be able to reach the goals and objectives of the organization, but also customer needs. And the last competency that we look at in under execution is continuous improvement, which is an individual's attitude towards improving themselves and also the attitude towards innovation. So often in our work, given a lot of changes internally with organizations, changes externally with climate change, amongst others, climate change, technological changes, and etc. We are called to look for new ideas on how we're doing our work, look for new ideas on how we're maintaining groups as leaders, but also implement those ideas. When it comes to innovation, innovation is it's quite easy for people to think of innovation in relation to the digital or maybe more technology focused industries. But really, in every industry, there is a need to, it's necessary to rethink the way we do our work and constantly encourage that environment where new ideas are welcomed, tried out, evaluated, and then reflected upon to see whether what results that implementing that idea had and whether it will be something that is repeated or there were lessons to be taken away. And so under continuous improvement, we scrutinize or we focus on the leaders' individual, their own attitudes towards improving themselves. So how they maybe take initiative to learn things from industry, from other people, but also innovating. So embracing new technology and also encouraging their team to learn. So these are the competencies or the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we focus on um, under the execution pillar of our leadership competency framework. Now, I just wanted us to also look at behaviors. So, what exactly would be some behaviors that are related to, or we would be able to see in leaders that would give us some insight into these competencies that we discussed before. So, when it comes to business approach, which we've said what they prioritize, whether they are prioritizing customers and organizational company results in general, we can see or we can be able to tell from how they are tracking or whether they're tracking how the organization is evolving, not just the organization, but the needs of the customers and what needs to be changed, but also how they're updating their own knowledge relevant to the role or relevant to delivering um, their tasks as a leader, but also how they're able to link their daily work to customers and organization priorities. And so we mentioned before in our previous poll that we often, something that really slows down our execution is unclear priorities. And so something that or an example behavior that we scrutinize under the business approach competency is a leader's ability to link their daily work or what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to the customer needs and the organizational priorities. When it comes to problem solving, um, example behaviors that we scrutinize under this group of competencies include how they probe for missing information when they're solving problems or they're seeking to implement different solutions. What sources do they use? How do they determine the value of the information that they're receiving, and how do they use it? But also, so that is related to the second one, which is how they filter and condense the data or the information that they have to determine what is valuable, what is not valuable, um, which one is significant, which one isn't significant, and how they're able to identify patterns and anomalies essentially to enable them to reach the correct conclusions that informs action within themselves and also within the teams. And when it comes to decision making, that is the third competency in the execution pillar. Some example behaviors that we look for based on how we define decision making as essentially being an evidence-based approach. Some example behaviors that we look for here is how a person collects evidence before acting or making or deciding on a course of action, how quickly they initiate action once the threshold is met. And what we mean here by threshold is once they have information from information, all key information required to make that decision. So it could be by talking to experts, it could be by um, looking at and trying to find out what is the origins, or so diagnostic information about the causes of the problem, information about possible solutions. So then having an informed choice instead of perhaps having only a single choice that is informed by, say, one person's input. But also, we look at how they're able to provide clear resolutions and take accountability for the decisions that they make. Once decisions are made, it's important that they're seen through, and whatever is the result of that decision is implemented and reflected upon to inform continuous improvement, which is the other or the last competency that is under the execution pillar, and which under the competency or the continuous improvement. Some example behaviors here are how a person treats or their attitude towards progress and new methods, and especially whether they're able to view these as positive or more as threats and things that we can do without. But also how they experiment, how they test, and they iterate the process of experimenting to encourage innovation and also development of new ideas, and how they're able to scan industry for technologies and tools that improve delivery. So these are some example behaviors that can give you a hint or some insight into um, where a person stands in terms of their mastery of these competencies, which fall under the execution pillar and which are very key to superior performance in our roles, but also in leadership in general. So then, how can we build leadership that delivers stronger results over time? The competencies and the pillar that we're discussing, of course, is about delivery, is about how the work is done, is about how people experience a leader. Uh, relationships is also involved with that, but this one is more about the delivery of the work, which we defined as accomplishment of tasks, but also maintenance of the groups. So, um, while we are then building leadership that delivers strong results, the obvious answer is by experience. That is the obvious answer. And as we have looked at all of the competencies that we discussed and all the continuous improvement, the innovation, the decision making, it's quite obvious that people who are starting out in their careers, um, are do not have the necessary experience or maybe knowledge to inform optimal decision making or to solve problems the way a person who is more experienced does. And this is even supported by some of our research. So we've done an analysis from all the assessment data that we have, which is close to 1,000 people who have completed the assessment, and across all pillars, but also across all competencies within the execution pillar. There's a statistically significant difference between how people who are more experienced, people who are 35 plus, and we know that these are people with more experience in the workplace, how they rate themselves um, in terms of decision making, in terms of continuous improvement, problem solving, and execution in general as a pillar, and those who are younger. And so this is the obvious answer that experience will build you up as you go. However, we can be more proactive and not wait for people to have 5 years in a job to understand how to solve problems. And the more proactive way to develop the delivery of leadership or the execution is through diagnosis and improvement. And this is something that can be um, implemented at any level of a person's and individual's career. So whether they're entry level, they're just starting out, whether they are more middle managers, whether they're more experienced in C-suite um, level of experts. Psychometric tools are ones that can really help people gain insight into their abilities, or what we call, how we call it at Zanga, is the level of mastery um, which they are showing in their role. And so with tools like our assessment, we have the competencies that we measure, or we help somebody get insight to, and the particular level of mastery. But not only that, the reports come with recommendations for action, what they can do relative to their current roles, what's important to them, what they're called to deliver on a day-to-day approach, what they can do to improve it, and also a tool or a resource for how they're planning that improvement. And so this is a more proactive way of guaranteeing those results, or improving those results that we're seeing in people, regardless of their level of experience, regardless of their level of leadership in the organization. So um, another quick poll for you before we wrap up the session. So if you can think of the coming month, we are close to the end of the year. And here we were discussing behaviors, competencies, skills, knowledge that have an impact on a leader's delivery. That is a direct impact on how they um, tackle the tasks, or even assign tasks, etc. But also how they maintain the groups. So how they motivate teams, how they engage with people, how they make decisions, and continuous improvement. I'll just give you a minute to reply. Okay, I'll share the results. So for this one, 67% of us shared that what would have the biggest impact on your delivery in the coming month is improving the speed of decisions with which decisions are made. And like I was discussing and sharing previously, um, yes, there are stakeholders who are sometimes needed to be part of the decisions that we make, and need to have approvals and etc. However, um, this also hinges upon the information you've been able to collect, and the threshold, or how much you um, how to what extent you're confident that you have enough information to act. So perhaps a tip I can give related to this is or automating the decisions, or the information collecting process. So making it really easy, having people perhaps that you count on, or other channels that you can quickly garner information related to that decision, information that you need to make a decision, and that will help you speed up the decision making, but also implementation process. The other that's also related to collecting evidence. So we do need information, and actually in business psychology, we say there's four types of evidence that we collect, that can speed up, but also help you make more stronger decisions, whatever it is. And there's research, or the science. There's stakeholders, so it could be in this case the team, people you work with, and etc. Um, there is also, so I said that the science, the stakeholders, there's also yourself, what you know, and don't look down on your experience up until that point. It's the foundation of how you are, um, it forms the filter and the foundation of how you're processing all other information. But also there is, I forgot the last one, but I can share that with you. So, yeah, having these groups, or having people that you that you know from these groups is one way of strengthening the evidence and making sure that you have the right evidence informing your decisions that you make. Right. So, in terms of just some key takeaways from today's session, and what I hope, what I would advise that we start, stop, and continue based on the information that we've shared today, the problem-solving model, the execution pillar, and the competencies that fall within it, and how those are tied to leadership outcomes. One, we can start building capacity and skills for problem solving early on in people's careers. So, as we mentioned, experience definitely is an important teacher, and some would even say the ultimate, but it's necessary given how fast everything around us is moving and evolving, that we start investing in the skills for problem solving, for decision making, for executing essentially superior work early on in people's careers. And so, whether it's emerging talent, that's people who just joined the workplace, whether it's middle management and people who are individual contributors, middle managers, C-suite, it's quite important that there is that reflection and that um, very we are very keen on investing in their skills, their problem-solving skills. Something we can actually stop is relying on experience as a sole teacher. Like I mentioned, it's key, but also things are evolving. Perhaps a person's experience that they've gained over the past 20 years working in a certain role and industry might not be everything they need to solve the problems of the 21st century or that we're facing in this particular year. And so we do need to, even for people who have experience, encourage reflection and use of objective tools such as psychometric assessments to help them reflect and grow. And what we can continue is like encouraging those reflective practices. So reflective leadership practices where we ask, for example, for feedback, things like tools like the 360 tool at Zanga Metrics, which we haven't covered, but we have, um, are also sources of key information that help leaders improve their delivery and how they do their work. But also there's then value in mentorship because again, um, sharing experience is also building people's ability to deliver superior results. So, without further ado, thank you. I think that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for joining, and over to you, Amadeus.
Thank you very much, Doreen. That was amazing. And I think there are definitely some very clear takeaways from this. Um, so we are about to go into the Q&A part of this webinar. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat below, or to put up your hand and you can unmute yourself and ask the question. We do ask you to give us feedback. Please give us feedback on how the session has gone so far. I'm putting a link in the chat. It's a very short little survey. You can give us this feedback in a minute or two while we wait for your questions. And it helps us make these webinars better for people like you and for yourself. So please do let us know what you think. Your voice matters, your input matters, and this is how we improve. Thank you. If anybody has a question, please put it in the chat or put up your hand and we will unmute you and you can go ahead and ask us. I do actually already have a question to get us started with that was sent to me directly. And this goes to you, Doreen. And the question is, what should a leader do when the team resists new methods or technologies? How does task accomplishment balance with group maintenance? Or should I say those are two different questions that I've read together? So let's start with the first one. How do leaders deal with team resistance to new methods and new technologies? I think this is something many of us may have faced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is, as we were discussing today, the nature of problems that leaders usually have to deal with are can be ill-defined, as in they have different possible reasons and different possible solutions. So, what I would recommend in terms of a situation where there is resistance to change or to new methodology is diagnostic work, for lack of a better way to put it. So, diagnostic work or trying to find out the origins of the friction. So, it could be a few things. It could be perhaps a skills gap. If, for example, and I've noticed this in quite a few places that I've worked and others that I've worked with. Um, if digital systems are being introduced at a very fast pace and people don't necessarily have the skills to adapt to that, the resistance could be because of a gap in the skills. And so that definitely points towards some type of training or skill building program to help. But also, it could point towards just a reevaluation of the benefits of that technology and the time it's taking and what the the outputs are as opposed to the original ways of working. But it could also just be something about the culture. Um, if perhaps the culture of an organization to that point has been one where um, people are very stuck in their ways and they're very that has always been the way that they've done things and they're comfortable living it that way. It could be something or a situation where a leader needs to kind of spearhead a culture change in terms of embracing more of a learning culture and that helps people to um, open up and be okay with trying out new things. What was the second question?
Okay,
And I
thank
hope
you
that
very
answers the
much.
first one.
I believe it does. I believe it does. And the feedback from the group also confirms this. Also, there's thanks for you sharing your insightful approach. And indeed, these behaviors are very helpful in understanding what we're doing and how we can approach. So thank you for that. The other question is, and again, if anybody has a question, please let us know, put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll unmute you to ask it. The second question is, how does task accomplishment balance with group maintenance, right? So doing the work versus maintaining the group.
Um, hmm. I think they're equally important. But maybe nowadays there is maybe nowadays there's a bit of a depending on the industry and the nature of the work being taken. Maybe there could be an argument um for tasks and I'm talking this about this in the context, for example, of AI doing some of the heavy lifting and perhaps people hiring. I know that a lot of companies are now just hiring AI to do the work instead of the people. And so in that context, I see definitely that the focus then just becomes working on the tasks because there's minimal people um, involved. Um, but I think these are equally important in a context where perhaps that's not the case because the people are the ones that drive and actually do the work. As a leader, yes, you have the vision, you might have the vision, you might have the motivation, and studies actually support that leaders are much more highly engaged in their work because of various benefits they enjoy as leaders, including flexibility and others. Um, but if the team isn't aligned, then the work won't get done. So I look at this, I know in the context of today's discussion, we kind of separated the two and we're talking about doing the task and performing the task and maintaining the group, but they're actually quite related. And I would advise for a more balanced approach, a more situational approach, considering what is being needed both to accomplish the task, because sometimes that has to do with the people. and vice
Indeed.
versa.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed. Wisdom. Thank you very much, Doreen. That was very
Thank you.
insightful. Does anybody have any further questions, comments, or feedback? We're coming up on the hour, and we want to be mindful and respectful of your time. Um, just raise your hand or um, unmute yourself, or just put a comment in the chat if you'd like. We'll give that a minute, give everyone a chance. Are there any final questions before we close out for today? Okay. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Nobody has sent me anything. And I have also not seen any raised hands. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We are very grateful for everybody who joined us live on Zoom. We do this every month. We hold our live public webinars on the last Thursday of every month, traditionally. You are most welcome to join. To stay up to date about our webinars and what Zanga is doing, our upcoming reports, please follow us on LinkedIn. You'll find us under the name Zanga Metrics. Stephanie, thank you very much. Thank you for insightful answers, Doreen. Thank you to the whole Zanga team. Thank you, Steph. We're very grateful. And thank you for joining us and for your support. Don't forget to join our mailing list. And our next session will be December the 11th, because we understand the year's winding up. We're coming up on that holiday season, and we definitely have something exciting for you to close the year out before you go for your holidays. If you have any questions about our assessments, analytics, or people solutions for high context organizations in Africa and other emerging markets, please get in touch. My email is on the screen. That is amadeus@zangametrics.com, or you can visit zangametrics.com and contact us through our contact form. We are so grateful for you, both those of you who have joined us live and those who will watch this on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and other formats. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Have a most blessed day wherever and whenever you are in this wonderful world, and we wish you a fantastic day. Goodbye. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.